Okay, if I call you Josh.
Yes.
Thank you. So Josh, I wanted to call your attention to State's Exhibit, if we could, the last one that ended on during your direct testimony. Is it number 27, State's Exhibit 27? Okay.
26.
26, excuse me. State's Exhibit 26. And Josh, you said that you know Nicole and you can identify her in this photograph, correct?
Yes.
And she was the bride, correct?
Correct.
And she's dancing with a man in the middle. Do you know who that is?
I do not.
In the picture in the background, there's a food table. Do you remember where the food table was?
Yes, kind of off in the grass area.
Does it appear to be Kim Matthews at that food table in the back? Can you tell?
I cannot tell. But
Can you see a woman that's kind of blurry that's in a blue dress? That's at the food table closest to the house.
yes, yes, I see her more clearly now.
Okay. Does that appear to be Kim Matthews to you?
It does.
In the picture, is there anybody else other than Alex Matthews and Chip Matthews that you can identify?
No.
Did you, other than your former teacher, Mr. Riggenbach, did you know anybody else that were guests at the wedding?
Mrs. Beinecke,
And she was,
another Ravenscroft teacher.
and did she have an occasion to come and talk to you or any of the other of your friends, either after the ceremony or at any time?
I think we talked to her briefly, maybe in passing.
Okay. Do you recall whether that was at the on the front patio, or excuse me, on the front porch or the back patio?
I think it was actually before the wedding kind of procession happened. She sat near us in our little row of chairs, and I think we talked for the 5 minutes we were there before Nicole came out.
So at that point, obviously, nobody had any wine glasses or anything in their hands at that point.
No.
And in the picture, State's Exhibit 26, when Dr. Matthews is back, it's to us, and he's facing your table, you of course are not drinking right there, right?
No.
And once you got to the back patio, you never approached the bartender to get any kind of alcoholic beverage, did you?
No.
And they were serving water as well, weren't they?
I believe so.
Did you ever get any water?
No.
Okay. Did you ever get anything else to drink? Did you ever drink a beer or anything like that?
No.
And so it's your testimony that you ordered or you received one glass of wine at the beginning of the right after the ceremony, the beginning of that front gathering where the family's back taking pictures.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you said you didn't think that you drank very much of it at all.
No.
Were there water bottles on your table too? Do you recall?
I can't remember. I think there might have been a couple, because I know John had one.
So you specifically recall JT or John having a bottle of water?
Yes.
Okay. That's all the questions I have. Thank you, Your Honor.
Redirect. You may step down, sir. Please call your next witness.
Your Honor, this time the state will call Ms. Lucia Foster to the stand.
Ma'am, if you would, please place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you give before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Foster, good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Will you please state your name for the record?
Lucia Foster.
Ms. Foster, how are you employed?
I work at Perazod,
What
Cafe Perazod.
What is Cafe Parazon?
It's a Mediterranean restaurant
Where is it located?
in Durham.
And it's a restaurant there in Durham, but to your knowledge, does that restaurant also do a catering service?
Yeah, we do fine dining and catering.
How long have you been at Parazod?
A little bit over a year.
And prior to working at Parazod, what's your employment background?
I I was former educator, teacher, and ran a nonprofit theater immediately prior to moving to Durham.
Thank you, ma'am. And then in your duties at Parazod, you said you've been there a little over a year now?
Correct.
So June 28th of 2014, you had just started?
Yes, sir.
Just started.
Yes.
What are your duties there at Parazod currently?
Currently, I manage a small cafe that is in the building, run by Parazod, but not within Parazod itself.
And back in June 28th, on June 28th of 2014, did you have those same responsibilities?
No.
Or did you do a little something different?
I did something
Tell us
different.
what you did back in June of 2014.
I was a bartender and a server.
Did you do that both at the restaurant itself and also in relation to the catering?
Yes, sir.
I want to turn your attention specifically to June 28, 2014, a wedding at the home of Dr. Charles and Kimberly Matthews. Did you have an opportunity to work that wedding as a server?
Yes, I did.
Tell us a little bit
As a
about
bartender.
bartender.
Yes, sir.
Tell us a little bit about how you got involved with working at that event.
I was asked to work that event. It was the second catering event I'd worked.
How does that happen? How do you get assigned to an event?
I'm asked if I'm free. We need you, they say. And can you work this event?
Who asked you to help work this event?
That's a good question. I honestly don't remember. It was either the general manager, Igor, our catering director, Joshua, or the head of the catering team, Michelle. One of the three of them asked me.
You mentioned a name, Joshua. Who's Joshua?
Joshua Weaver, he's the catering director at Parazod.
And you said your duties that night were to be a bartender.
Yes.
Describe what you knew about this event going into it.
I knew that it was at a private home. I knew it was a wedding. I knew that we weren't bringing alcohol. It was all there. We were bringing food. It was the first wedding event I'd worked with Parazod.
You said that your company or your restaurant was not supplying the alcohol. Was that unusual, or is that something that happens in the catering business depending on the event?
It's hard for me to say because that was only my second catering job with Parazod. It's, as far as I know, it differs depending on the contract arrangement.
Thank you, Ms. Foster. When you arrived, what time did you arrive there at the wedding itself?
I don't know when I was supposed to.
Okay. What was your first duty there that night?
To fold napkins and silverware.
So you had other duties besides being a server
Yes, sir.
or a bartender?
Yeah.
When was the first time that you started in your role as a bartender there at the wedding?
It was probably an hour and a half after we got there.
There's been some testimony that there was a kind of a cocktail hour immediately out after the ceremony and then a reception following pictures.
Right.
Were you working the cocktail hour as a bartender?
Yes.
And prior to that cocktail hour, which to our understanding happened immediately after the ceremony, was there any alcohol served to guests prior to that event?
Not by us, not that I know of.
So after the ceremony, when there was this front porch setting, that's when you started your duties as a bartender?
Yes, sir.
Can you describe for us, ma'am, kind of what the setup was for the bar there at the front of the residence?
We had a couple of different kinds of wine. We had bottles of water. I don't remember if we also had sparkling water. I believe that there was a small cooler with a 6-pack or 2 of beer that was not available for public consumption, but was to be set aside for, I think it was groomsmen, I'm not sure.
Do you know how that beer got there behind the bar, or kind of what your instructions were with regards to the beer?
I was backup bartender, and so I was running back and forth to set up the bar and then back to where our station is, where the kitchen setup was. And so by the time I got to the bar, my fellow bartender, Casey, just filled me in as to what we were doing.
Now, you said there were two kind of areas where the alcohol was being stored, and then was there a different area in which the alcohol was being served to the guests?
It was just on the ground, so we had any white wine that was chilled in buckets of ice, and then red wine was, I can't remember if, it's stored on the ground until we pick it up to open up the bottles,
So
like in a container on the ground.
So were there two tables there, or two tables acting as the bar, or just the one table where you put the...
It was just one long table.
Now, Ms. Foster, when you served individuals there, and we'll just start with the front porch part of what you were doing there, how did you actually serve guests of the wedding?
We poured glasses of wine, and some, I'm not sure I understand the question. How did we?
Sure, I'll rephrase it. Did you actually hand the glasses to the guests, or did you have glasses out on this table that you described?
Both.
Both, okay. And was there any kind of determining factor of when you actually handed someone a glass of wine, or when it was just out on the table? And I guess what I mean by that, if there's a long line or it's busy, tell us about that.
So we opened several bottles of wine, poured several glasses because it was really busy at the beginning. It stayed pretty busy all the time. So in order to stay ahead of the crowd, we kept pouring glasses and had them available for people. Some people asked us for them. Some people took them, I guess. I'm clear that I handed some people glasses, and I'm clear that some people just took the glasses off of the bar.
So on the front porch, kind of call it the cocktail hour, is it your recollection that there were wine glasses filled with wine, whether it be red or white, present on that table the entire night, or the entire cocktail hour?
Yes.
And you may have handed some people some glasses also, but there were glasses there all night long.
During that session, yes.
Okay. You mentioned that you were the secondary bartender.
Yes.
Who was the other bartender?
Casey Miller.
Okay. And is it Miss Miller?
Mm-hmm.
Is she still with Parazide?
No, she has recently left employment there within the last month.
Okay. Do you know where she went?
Yes, she moved to Oregon to be with her brother, who is undergoing treatment for cancer.
Miss Foster, turning your attention to the teenagers that we've heard from in this case,
Mm-hmm.
do you recall any interaction with the kids, the teens that night?
Yes.
What was the first interaction that you recall with any of them? We've heard about JT, Thomas, Anna, Natalie, and Josh.
So they were talking in front of the bar, just about things that they sort of teenage life. I remember that one of them asked for wine, and I joked with them about the fact that they weren't old enough to have wine, because I knew that because I just heard them talking about high school activities.
Do you remember which of the teenagers it was, whether it was one of the males, females?
One of the guys.
One of the guys.
Yeah.
And when you say that it was out in front of the bar, which bar? Are we still talking about the front bar at this point?
So I had that first conversation in the front bar. I had another very specific interaction at the back bar with JT.
And we'll get to that in a
Okay.
moment. I just want to be clear. So this first interaction, the group is talking about high school, college
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and what was said to you.
It was either, can I have a glass of red or a glass of white? And I would just sort of laughed, and I think I said, maybe when you're older.
Did you have conversations with Dr. Matthews and Mrs. Matthews about your responsibilities there as a bartender that night?
No.
Okay. Did you have any conversation with your company, the catering company, as to what your responsibilities would be that night in terms of serving underage kids?
We talked about what our duties were as bartenders. I know from having bartended before in another state what my responsibility is for serving underage drinkers.
And what was your responsibility that night, Ms. Foster, regarding serving underage folks, kids?
That you don't serve them.
At any point during that night, well, we'll just start there at the front bar. After they asked you for the wine, what was your response?
I think I just sort of laughed and said, maybe when you're older, and we have water.
At that point, did you provide them, any of them, water?
I offered water, yeah.
Did they take the water?
I think so, yeah.
At any point while you were there on the front patio area, did you see the 4 or 5 teenagers that we've been talking about? Did you see them with any glasses of alcohol, wine, champagne, anything like that?
No.
And we've shown some pictures about them sitting at a table kind of right out front there. Did you have any interaction with the kids there at that table?
No.
After you had that initial interaction with the kids, kind of where'd you go at that point?
I went to the back bar. Casey and I both went to set up the back bar.
So at some point, tell us about when that transition occurred. Was there a certain point in time where you were to close that front bar and then go to the back?
Yes, so according to our schedule, which we have for every event, I believe it was either 45 minutes or an hour according to the schedule. When we hit that time, another server came and let us know he would pack up the bar and we needed to move to the back patio and set up the back bar.
And if you can describe for us what the back bar kind of situation was like.
It was bigger. It was an L-shaped table, I believe, and we had water and wine. Again, I think there was sparkling water, but I'm not sure. Bottles of water, definitely, and a couple different varieties of wine.
What was the setup like at the back bar in terms of where you were pouring the wine, and then how was it served?
Again, we poured wine by request and also poured wine in advance because there were waves of people coming up at one time. So in order to accommodate that, we poured several. And then at certain points of the evening, people will come up and directly ask us for wine, wine for someone and handing it to them.
Specifically, Ms. Foster, when the transition occurred and the back bar was set up, how busy of a crowd did you have at the bar, right when that bar opened?
It was pretty busy initially.
How long would you say that it stayed busy back in that area?
I'm not sure. Maybe 10, 15 minutes? I really don't know.
How long would you say, Ms. Foster, that there were pre-poured glasses on the table the entire night that you were back there in the back reception area?
There were pre-poured glasses, not constantly. It was to accommodate the stream of people. So at some points there was no pre-poured glasses, and at other points there were.
And did that vary throughout the night?
Yes.
You mentioned a moment ago that you had a specific interaction with JT back at the back bar. What about that do you recall?
He asked me for some wine, and I said, how about some water? And he sort of laughed, and I handed him some water, and he drank it, and then later he came back and asked for more water and said, that water was a good idea.
Your interaction with JT at this point, can you describe, did you form an opinion as to whether he was impaired at that point?
My impression was that he was inebriated.
And what led you to that impression that he was impaired?
He was not completely stable on his feet. He was pretty loud and boisterous, definitely bubbly and chipper. He was that way at the front bar too, but seemed louder, bolder, just things that I would associate with inebriation.
How long had the back bar been set up at the point that JT came up and had this interaction with you?
I'm not completely sure.
Were you kind of paying it? Did you see if the dances were still going on at that point when he came up to you?
I don't know. I do know that after the first time I offered him water, he came and got water from me multiple times. So I can't remember how long into it. I mean, he continued to come back and get water.
Did he ask you for any, you may have mentioned this, did he ask you for any specific kind of alcohol the first time he went up to you?
No. No.
At some point, did he ask you for bubbly?
Okay, so one of them did ask me for the bubbly stuff.
You said one of them, was it?
It was one of the guys. I'm not sure who it was.
And did you offer that person water as well?
I believe so. I did not give them any alcohol.
Ms. Foster, you mentioned that there was that you did provide them with water. How did you go about providing them with water?
Gave them bottles. The water was in bottles.
And the water that you served to individuals that night all of that was in water, to your knowledge?
All of it was, sorry, repeat the question.
When you served water to individuals, it was in bottles?
Yes, sir.
You didn't pour it in other glasses or anything like that?
I don't believe so. I don't think so.
As JT came up to you several times and asked for water, did your opinion that he was impaired, did it change during the course of your interactions with him?
He did not seem increasingly impaired after that interaction.
But still impaired?
Yeah.
When did you next see JT that night?
I'm not sure if it was where the time frame was, but while the bar was still set up, I needed to clear things, take the empty glasses and wine racks and things back to the outside back prep area. And I saw him in the hallway. There's a little hallway between the back patio and the kitchen, and the hallway sort of led to a back kitchen door, which is what we were using, the caterers were using to go in and out.
Who was JT talking to at that point?
Mr. Matthews.
And could you tell what the substance of their conversation was?
It seemed upbeat, and I remember the conversation referencing how great it was that JT and Thomas had been friends for so long and that they could continue a friendship, and that they, acknowledging that it was a good group of friends that they had, and also talking a little bit about future plans, where I believe Mr. Matthews asked him where he was going to school, or he just told Mr. Matthews where he was going to school.
How long would you say that Dr. Matthews and JT had this conversation while you were present?
It was at least several minutes, because I walked in and out a couple times, and I just remember them because I had to walk around them.
At this point, Ms. Foster, do you recall if JT had a wine glass or
He did not.
alcohol beverages?
He did not.
But Ms. Foster, at this point when Dr. Matthews was having this conversation with JT, you had already formed the opinion that he was impaired, that JT was impaired.
Yeah, earlier in the evening, yes.
So this conversation that Dr. Matthews was having with JT was post you providing the water to him because you
Correct.
thought he was drunk.
Correct.
After you witnessed that conversation with JT and Dr. Matthews, did you have any interaction with JT the rest of the night?
No.
How about any of the other teenagers? Did you see what they were doing that night?
So There was people walking down in the basement. JT, I believe, and Thomas walking out the back door, past the area where they have their trash. There was, I believe, both of them had walked out to the driveway and back, and in walking back and forth through the hallway, saw a couple people going up and down the stairs, the basement stairs.
How about the girls, Anna and Natalie? Do you remember seeing them throughout the night?
Yes.
What was their state of impairment when you saw them, if in fact they were impaired?
I noticed that they were both impaired in that little hallway area going down to the basement. That was the time that I saw when I was walking in and out carrying wine glasses and things. And they were going up and down to the basement. They seemed impaired.
And when you say they seemed impaired to you, how
Stumbling, clearly drunk.
Did you notice the females as well outside at the high top table?
Mm-hmm. They were all, I know that they were all sitting together, like the pictures. I remember them sitting at both of those tables, the back and the front.
The back and the front. Both of those photographs have depicted wine glasses in front of the teenagers. Do you remember seeing those wine glasses?
I do not.
Do you ever recall seeing any of the teenagers consuming alcohol while you were present?
I do not.
How about Thomas Matthews? When you saw him with JT, what sort of condition did he appear to be in?
Pretty bubbly, maybe impaired. I would say less so than JT. But I would say he was impaired.
What was the conversation when you saw JT and Dr. Matthews having the conversation, was that the last time you saw JT, or when you saw him with Thomas there in the hallway?
I'm not sure which happened first. I think the conversation with Dr. Matthews was the last time I saw him, but I'm not 100% sure.
After that, and you saw, at what point, I guess, did you notice that the teenagers were kind of gone from that table and had dispersed?
You say what time?
Yeah, approximately, if you're...
I really don't know what the time frame was. I was not wearing a watch, didn't have a phone as a timepiece, and was literally taking direction from my catering team as to where to go when.
What was, how'd you finish out the night, Ms. Foster? You recall what your duties were in terms of shutting down, and then what time you left from there?
I don't know what time. You'd have to ask Joshua or look at our contract. I know that we followed the schedule pretty closely. We were over schedule a little bit, but I don't know what the schedule was. Our duties at a specific time, we were told to start packing things up softly so that we weren't making a big deal of the fact that we were closing the party. So we packed a few things up. And at that point, I went to the back to help more busing while Casey stayed at the bar.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Ms. Foster, I'm approaching you with what has been marked for identification purposes, as State's Exhibit 29. If you can take a look at that document, tell me if you recognize what that document is.
Yes.
What is that?
It looks like what we would have had for our setup plan for catering.
And so it's the general setup of where the bar was, how it was moved, where seats were, and whatnot.
Yes.
And does that document fairly and accurately represent what the setup was that night there at the Matthews residence?
Yes.
Your Honor, this time I would ask to introduce State's Exhibit 29 into evidence.
State's Exhibit 29 is admitted into evidence.
Your Honor, permission to publish State's Exhibit 29. I have 14 individual copies for the members of the jury.
You may do so. Mr. Sheriff, if you would assist.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Foster, I'm going to ask you a couple questions about State's Exhibit 29 as we go along, and I think you still have the original copy. This entire diagram, what area of the house does it depict, ma'am?
The outside patio area?
Okay, is that the back of the house that we've been referring to?
Yes.
Okay, so this area where the DJ is set up on the left and then the bar on the right, is that how the configuration was that night?
Yes.
And then after the ceremony, this where it's marked ceremony, would that have gone away? The altar or whatever was being used during the ceremony.
It did disappear, yeah. We moved that,
And
or
then-
it was moved.
I'm sorry. And then the chairs that are depicted there in that diagram, during that cocktail hour, were they taken away?
They were. I didn't see them because I was in the front.
Now, you said you noticed that the teenagers there in the back area throughout the night. Can you tell the members of the jury using your diagram which table that you saw the teenagers at?
The circular table closer to the DJ.
So the one in kind of the top left circular table, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Foster. May I have just a moment, Chairman?
You may.
I don't have any further questions at this time. Thank you.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Foster.
Good afternoon.
You indicated that Parasite, was that your first catering job?
It was my second with
Second,
them.
okay.
Yes, sir.
And you indicated that you had some experience out of state in doing catering and bartending work?
Bartending, yes.
And what state was that?
Maryland.
And how long did you bartend in Maryland?
A couple of years in relation to the theater that I ran. We had a small bar there.
Did you have to receive training to become a bartender?
I did not have to receive training, but I did receive training.
Okay. What kind of training did you receive?
I was trained by a bar, an experienced bartender in terms of pours and specifically our policy within handling alcohol at the bar, what was appropriate. I also underwent tip certification, which I'm not sure what that's called in this state, but essentially to be able to recognize impairment, how to handle people who are drunk. And it's in the state of Maryland, you have to have a licensed tip certification person in order to have alcohol served. You have to have a tip certified person present.
So did you receive some sort of a license from the state of Maryland?
I did.
Okay. And was any part of your training the identification aspect? That is,
Yes.
being able, okay, can you explain that to the jury, what your training was as far as the identification?
Sure, that we were reminded through the tip certification program. You were reminded what the drinking age is, shown a variety of different types of identification, what to look for.
How to figure out if an ID is fake
Correct.
or not?
Correct.
Okay. And of course, if there's anyone that appears close to 21, was it your policy to check the ID?
Our policy was if someone looked under 35, it was the policy in Maryland to check an ID.
And as far as when you went to work for Cafe Parasite, was that the same mentality or policy that you followed?
That is the same policy I followed, yes, sir.
And of course, you had training at Cafe Parasite, correct?
I had instruction, yeah.
And in terms of being a bartender,
It is a little bit better per hour to be a bartender.
and of course, you got You got paid for your work at the Matthews wedding, is that correct?
Yes, and that's a different rate, the catering rate.
With regards to the setup of the first bar that was outside on the front porch, you helped set that bar up, is that correct? Or at least partially?
At least partially. I was doing a lot of running to bring stuff.
And did you bring any of the wine or beverages to that bar?
No, I brought wine racks.
Do you recall who brought the wine and other beverages to that bar area? Was it someone with Cafe Parazai?
It would have been somebody with our catering team, yes.
And you indicated it was you and Casey Miller that were manning that bar?
Correct.
So no one from Cafe Parazai, other than you and Casey, served alcohol from that bar, is that correct?
Correct.
And it was your testimony that Thomas Matthews, J.T. Taylor, Anna Ergish, and Natalie Freeman, you did not observe any of them come up and get a glass of wine or any alcoholic beverage from that table?
I did not see that, no.
Were you there with Casey the entire hour before the bar was broken down?
No.
Okay. Did you go anywhere?
Just back and forth to the back. Again, behind the house was where our kitchen staff was and where we were storing everything. So I was running back and forth to be able to take dirty glasses back, bring clean glasses,
Were you
bring
cleaning
rice.
up glasses off of the tables that were out?
I was not.
Was there anyone from Cafe Parazai doing that?
Yes.
And so would they periodically take glasses back and y'all would wash them in the kitchen? Is that what happened?
They would periodically take them back. I'm not sure where they were being washed.
And so did you personally see someone from Cafe Parazai doing that while you were bartending?
Yes.
And obviously when you were running back and forth to carry glasses and whatnot, Casey remained at the bar.
Yes, sir.
Did you see Casey serve any alcohol to Thomas Matthews, Natalie Freeman, Anna Ergish, or J.T. Taylor?
I did not.
And of course, neither you nor Casey, while she was in your presence, received any instruction from Kim or Chip Matthews to give alcohol to any of those individuals.
We did not.
When you broke down that bar and you opened up the one in the back, you said it was a little bit bigger. Was it you and Casey again, or was it you and another bartender?
It was Casey and I at the back bar.
And your testimony again was that you did not see any of Thomas or any of his friends drinking back there, nor did you serve them at any time.
Correct.
Now, of course, you didn't see Chip or Kim give them any wine at any time
I did
or any
not.
other alcoholic beverage,
No.
did you? And when you saw Chip speaking to JT in the hallway, were they drinking water?
They were both drinking water. Yes, sir.
In fact, did you ever see Chip Matthews come to the bar and get a drink from you or Casey?
To my knowledge, both of the Matthews drank water the whole night. I only saw both of them with water.
Were you interviewed by the Raleigh Police Department?
I was.
How many times?
Once.
You recall who interviewed you?
Sergeant Hoolan, I think is his name.
And did you tell Sergeant Hoolan the same set of facts that you told the jury today?
I believe so.
Were you ever charged criminally in association with your bartending at the Matthews house?
No.
That's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Just briefly, if I can publish State's Exhibit number 23, that's our 7167, if I may approach the witness as well, Your Honor.
You may.
Ms. Foster, I know it's kind of a long ways away, and tougher with the projected picture, but can you, using this laser pointer, kind of show the members of the jury where that bar was that night?
I don't know how to,
Red button
Okay.
right there.
so this is the bar.
And it's that L shape that you've described earlier.
Yes, sir.
And kind of in State's Exhibit 2023, it's hard to tell, but there appear to be two females dressed in what appears to be all black. Does that look like you and
That is me and Casey.
Casey?
Yes, sir.
And then there's appears to be some wine glasses on one side of that table, and then bottles of wine on the other part of the L. Is that the configuration you've described?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. And to be fair, in State's Exhibit 23, the bar is not busy at that point. You're just kind of, y'all are standing.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Foster. I don't have any further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Recross-examination.
Just a couple. Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Foster, does that appear to be the first dance between the bride and the groom?
Probably, given that there's nobody else dancing on the dance floor.
And did you meet at any time during the course of your work at the Matthews house the young woman who's seated in between the Anna Urgish and the other group of Thomas's friends? Do you see between the bride and groom and the table back there a woman sitting down?
Can I have the actual picture to see that, please? Thank you. Okay, the woman seated?
Yes.
Yes.
Who is that?
I believe that's Thomas's sister.
Was the owner of Cafe Perizot at the wedding?
Yes.
What's his name?
Georgios Bakashaw?
He never gave you any instructions to serve alcohol to anybody underage, did he?
No, sir.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Redirect.
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
You may step down.
Okay, thank you.
Please call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, this time the state will call Ms. Lindsay Ringenbach to the stand.
Ma'am, if you would, please place your left hand on the Bible, raise your right. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you give before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Ringenbach, good afternoon.
Hi.
Can you please state your name for the court?
Lindsay Ryan Ringenbach.
And can you spell your last name for us?
Ringenbach.
Thank you, ma'am. And how are you employed?
I'm a teacher.
And where do you teach?
I'm currently at a Research Triangle charter school.
And what do you do there at that school?
I'm in the college counseling department.
Have you ever been involved or employed at Ravenscrawl?
Yes,
In what capacity were you employed at Ravenscrawl?
college counseling.
You're obviously not still there. When did you leave Ravenscrawl?
2013.
At any point, and you've been here and heard some of the names of the individuals or teenagers involved in this case, did you interact with any of those teenagers while you were employed at Ravenscrawl?
Yes.
Tell us about that, please.
Thomas Matthews was my advisee, and I knew Josh McCoy.
Josh McCoy.
Mm-hmm.
Ever know JT or Anna or Natalie? I don't know if she was.
No.
Who are you married to?
Scott Ringenbach.
Okay, do that kids call him Mr.
Mr. R. Mrs. and Mrs. R. Mm-hmm.
What does he teach there at Ravenscrawl?
6th grade math.
And where is he currently
He's
today?
in England.
Right. Did you and your husband have the opportunity to attend a wedding at the Matthews house back on June 28th of 2014?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about how or kind of why you were invited to that wedding? Who did you know?
Yeah, we are friends with Nicole, and so we were invited by Nicole as a guest.
How about her parents, Dr. Charles Matthews and Mrs. Matthews? Were you friends with them, know them? What kind of relationship did you have with defendants?
In a professional setting through the advising program of Thomas, advising of Thomas.
But otherwise, just friends with Nicole.
With Nicole.
Ms. Ringenbach, excuse me. When you were there at the wedding, do you recall any interactions that you had early on with the teenagers that you described or that you know?
Yes, we saw them at the beginning before the ceremony when we all came in to the wedding. We talked to the kids at the cocktail reception, and we saw JT at the end of the wedding.
Well, let's start before the ceremony. At that point, was it all 5 of the teenagers that you interacted with, or just 1 or 2 of them?
Yeah, all 5. They came in and just said hi.
What anything of note about that conversation? Friendly?
Yeah, just friendly.
How are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
At that point, before the ceremony, could you tell if the teenagers had been drinking or if they had wine glasses, champagne glasses in their hand?
No, not at all.
And I think you said you also saw them kind of in the cocktail hour, as I've called it. Describe that interaction with us.
Yeah, we talked to JT and Natalie, my husband and I, on the walkway to talk about their college plans, and we just chatted about what they were doing next in life.
When you had that conversation with JT and Natalie, did you form any opinion that they'd been drinking, impaired, anything like that?
They didn't seem impaired, no.
You smell anything, smelling alcohol?
No.
And at that point, did they have wine glasses, alcohol glasses in their hand?
No, they had the jars of jam.
And Natalie testified earlier about taking to the jars of jam to her car. Is that what you
Yes.
believe you were seeing there?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
How long would you say that conversation lasted?
A while, probably 15, 20 minutes.
Friendly conversation? There's been some photographs shown of the teenagers at a table out in front of the house. Did you ever interact with the teenagers there or see them there at that table?
I remember seeing them, but we didn't really interact.
How about the wine glasses? Did you see those at that time?
Yes, I remember seeing them.
At any point, were the teenagers trying to hide those wine glasses in any way?
No.
Did you ask them about that, talk to them about that?
No, we didn't really interact with them that much right there because that did make us a little uncomfortable. So we didn't stand there and talk to them.
Tell us why that made you uncomfortable, ma'am.
Because there was alcohol with kids.
And at that point, you knew you interacted with some of these teenagers during their high school career, so you knew how old they were.
Yes.
After you saw them there at the table in the front yard, then the events lead to the back. Tell us what interaction you had with them in the back, if any.
Very little. We didn't interact with them at all that night in the back.
We've seen the photographs of the table and heard the description of where they were located. Did you see the teenagers there at that table?
I don't remember seeing them at that table. I have celiac disease and need to bring food when I eat out, so I couldn't eat any of the food. So my husband and I kind of stayed to the side where I could eat what I brought with me without appearing rude. So we didn't interact very much with any of the guests at the wedding.
And at some point, after you finished eating, did you move to the dance floor?
We did dance. Mm-hmm.
Okay. You mentioned earlier on in your testimony that you had a interaction with JT later in the night. What was that?
We saw him. We didn't.
Saw him.
Yeah, we saw him. As we were getting ready to leave, we saw him and Mrs. Matthews walking towards the house.
Approximately what time did you leave the wedding?
I think around 10.
Sometime around 10 o'clock?
Mm-hmm.
And when you saw Mrs. Matthews with JT, kind of if you can describe what you saw them doing.
They were talking.
And at that point, could you tell whether or not JT was impaired in any way?
I remember thinking that he might have been. I think I remember that his shirt was untucked or his bow tie was off or tilted, but I remember thinking that he was.
So you formed the opinion that he was impaired.
Mm-hmm.
How close to JT and Mrs. Matthews were you at that point?
Not close enough to hear a conversation.
And how long did you observe them there?
Maybe 10 seconds. Not
Yep.
long.
Where were they when you observed them there
They were walking into the house.
into the house? Did you see where Mrs. Matthews and JT went when they walked into the house?
No.
How did you exit the residence there that night?
From the front door.
The pictures we've shown kind of where you can see
Right.
through the house and exited out the front door. When you walked through the house, as you were exiting, did you see Mrs. Matthews and JT at that point?
No.
Was that the only time you saw the two of them together?
Yes.
Going back just briefly to the front of the yard, when you saw the kids there out in the front with the wine glasses on the table, did you see Charles or Kimberly Matthews come and take those wine glasses from them?
I didn't see them at all.
At any point did you see JT get a bottle of water? From them?
Yes. In the back, we did see him do that.
And the water that was being served to individuals there, how was it being served?
In bottles.
Thank you, ma'am. I don't have any further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. Is it Riggenbach?
Bring him back. Lindsay's fine.
Okay, thank you. Lindsay, how long have you known Nicole?
I probably 6 or 7 years, maybe longer.
Would you characterize the two of you as good friends?
No. She and my husband had a relationship from being a student teacher, a close relationship in that way, kind of a mentor relationship.
And when you and your husband noticed that there appeared to be some alcohol on a table with some people that you knew were underage, did you say anything to Nicole? Did either you or your husband say anything to Nicole about it?
No.
Or did you mention anything to the bartenders?
No.
And did you mention anything to Chip or Kim?
No.
And I think it was your testimony that you didn't notice JT or Thomas or Natalie Freeman or Anna Ergish drinking alcohol in the back patio. Is that correct?
Right.
As far as the layout of the house, are you familiar with it at all? Have you been in that house some or no?
That was my first time.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Very briefly, Your Honor, if I may approach.
You may.
Ms. Ringenbach, I'm going to show you what has been marked for identification purposes, State's Exhibit 30. Can you take a look at that photograph and tell me who you see in it?
Yeah, my husband and I. And yeah.
Do you recognize the two teenagers there as well?
I think Thomas, and I don't know which girl that is.
Your Honor, this time I would ask to introduce State's Exhibit 30 and publish.
You may do so. State's Exhibit 30 is admitted into evidence.
Can we publish 3832? That's you and your husband there dancing in the, I guess, foreground of the photograph.
Yes.
All right. And then you said you recognize possibly Thomas and another female there in the background.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. I don't have any further questions, Your Honor.
Re-cross-examination.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Your Honor. In looking at this State's Exhibit 30, does it appear that Thomas or the female with him have any wine glasses in their hands? Can you see that? If you look at the...
I don't have the picture up here, but
If I could approach, Your Honor.
no.
Thank you. No further questions.
Further direct.
There you go. Thank you.
You may step down. We'll stop for today. Please remember and follow all of my early instructions to you with regard to your duties as jurors. Return tomorrow morning at 9:30. Please return the exhibits to the sheriff. Do not take an exhibit outside of the courtroom unless I've instructed you to do so, whether now or later. So she's going to come collect those exhibits. Again, remember my instructions with regard to your notes. And as before, if you'd like to leave them here, you may do so. You may come on in. You may come on. You may leave them here. They'll be collected, returned to you tomorrow. If you'd like to take them home, again, remember your duties with regard to your notes. That is, do not let anyone else have access to them in any way whatsoever. Please remember and follow those and all other instructions. The jury is excused. Return tomorrow morning ready to come into the courtroom at 9:30.